And then we'll go through, again, just some protocols with the machine. Okay, perfect. There's a CBCT, and I can see here there's a pan. So I'm just going to grab it, and then we can look at the differences, right?
I think
See if we
Leanne
can.
needs a chair. Leanne, would you be opposed to a chair? She's recording. Oh,
Okay. So when you're going to take and create the pan, click the panoramic tab, and we see it actually looks pretty good. It's not too bad. Okay. You guys look like you use this panoramic autofocus, which is doing a pretty good job, and it's trying to pull it all in. You can continue to try to use that because it does do a pretty good job. This also will define the range. So if you notice, the condyles didn't quite get in, but if you position the patient a little different, a lot of times you can get the condyles in it. And you can see here, it's trying to place the panoramic curve on this pink line as close as possible, but you start to lose a little bit of the jaw on the outside. So if I turn that off, right, it's really just kind of putting a basic mapping out. So what I do is I bring the blue line up to about maxillary bone level at the anterior teeth. And you can see that the jawbone is at the very sort of perimeter or outer edge. And so one of the things you can do is you can actually just grab the hand tool and you can pull these out and watch how much more the jawbone pulls into view. So that's another way you can kind of help some of those things. And if I so just by bringing that, you know, it tries to pull things into a little bit more shape, getting it in a little bit closer. You can see how that works. Okay. So let's go through step by step, really the way I do it. But just in case you ever get to a point where you see that the bone is too far, or it's resting over here near the yellow, the reason why it looks cloudy or like it's darker is because it's outside the range. Watch if I bring it in, see how much sharper it gets as I move it back and forth. Okay. So here's how I typically do it. First thing I typically do is I look at this and I want to make sure that my bone, see here's the back of the bone, is not really in it. You want to hit the wrench button and you want the panoramic curve as wide as possible. So turn it up to 25. And what that does is it makes this whole band thicker. Okay? And when you make that whole band thicker, it's going to allow for more forgiveness of placement of. So now by moving this just a little bit further forward, you can see it brings a little bit more of this bone into the field of view or into shape. You know, if you move it out, right, it goes outside of it, so you're losing your focus. Make sense?
I'm just gonna wiggle a bunch of things.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm going through a little bit longer, but basically as long as you've got this as wide as you can, orientate this just so it gives you a little bit more of everything between the yellow lines. Then just come over, hit your A button, and see if it's correcting it, which we can see by hitting the A button. It's not doing it. So it's trying to throw, what you guys are probably trying to do is hit the autofocus to just get everything to toss it into the field of view, and it's just not able to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it does auto fit. That's what that means.
It's
right?
trying to auto fit it.
And it doesn't work.
It's not always working because
Okay.
it depends on how the patient's positioned, right? So like if you get one area in, then the other area is not, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So I always go as wide as I can go and in, and then I move this forward, and you can see how much nicer it is just by moving this
It tells you all the things to do right
a little
there.
bit forward.
See every one of
If you
them.
need to right click and tilt,
He has a different button on there. It's like a wrench button.
Oh, the wrench
that
button
you
is on the main thing. On the side of that is the wrench is always on the side. right?
wrenches are here.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
So
that's what
you're
you
making the
do
focal
right
trough
there.
as wide as possible.
Those are your tools. See, it looks like this.
But again, if not everything is going to fall into place, you use your hand button in the panoramic tool and just move it all out. And you can see
See, it says right here.
it does a lot better job
Panoramic curve.
of pulling.
So this is the panoramic page, and this is how you create the curve.
So if we extrapolate a panel from a CBCT, are we posting both the CBCT and the panel?
No.
Just
Okay.
the CBCT.
And we're,
So,
I'll tell you.
so when you've got your panoramic curve somewhat mapped out and everything's kind of falling in between the lines as you want them to be, hit your 3D button, MIP black and white, change it from the hard tissue render to the panoramic, and then slide this down.
what's that one do?
It's
Like a contrast?
it's like a 3D it's a 3D threshold button,
Okay.
and it makes it look from kind of like a really kind of hard bony level, and it's just kind of softens it a little
Okay.
bit and makes it look more like a real
Okay.
panoramic. Then turn your lights off and capture it.
So we were having problems with capturing panos from here and putting them in Dexys so we could see them in our rooms, and they just didn't look that good. I don't know why. Do you remember when we were doing that? They didn't look great.
Man, I lost it. Where did it go? Where did it go? It's because I hit a weird button somewhere. There we go. Threw this out of the panoramic curve. What did I do?